Doug Daugherty, president of Hamilton Flourishing. And we're glad that you've joined us down this journey, down this road, as we're talking to people who are running for Chattanooga mayoral and council offices. This March 2nd is the general election. And today we're delighted that we've got Robert Wilson with us, who is running for mayor. Robert's a native of Chattanooga, but before we talk to Robert, I just want to remind you, if you're watching, that the election is March 2nd. Voter registration ends February the 1st. Early voting will begin February the 10th and ends on February the 25th. So there is an early voting period, and if you haven't registered and you've seen this in time, you can run out to the Election Commission, or you can actually do it online. And while I'm thinking of online, at Hamilton Flourishing's website, hamiltonflourishing.org, our website, you'll find a picture of all the people running for mayor and council. There's about 36 people running for all of them combined, and it's hooked, or it's connected to their website or Facebook where we could find it. And we're also putting these interviews up as we collect them from the candidates. So it's a full service place. You can also register to vote there, and you can also, if you say, I don't know who my city council person is, you can look up and you can see what city council district you're in, so you can figure out who you're going to vote for in the city council races, which is important. In 2017, there were 3 city council races that had less than 800 votes deciding the winner. I'm sorry, for that side, 800 votes. So these are low turnout elections, they're off year, and so it's very important that you cast your vote. Being a good steward of your civic responsibilities, just like you're a good steward of your money. It's a good idea. So, but today we're talking to Robert Wilson, who's running for mayor. Robert, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me in, sir.
Delighted to have you. You threw me when you had your shirt on. It said, elect me mayor, and I couldn't figure out why you had the City of Chattanooga seal on there.
It's a conversation piece to wear into the community and to just open people's eyes to approach me and talk to me about.
Well, it's great. I've enjoyed our chat. As before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, Robert. Are you from Chattanooga?
I'm a Chattanooga native, as were my parents. Local businessman with 25 plus years in the automobile business. I'm currently a real estate broker. I've been in real estate about 5 years now.
Yeah. How's the real estate market in Chattanooga right now?
It's fantastic. You know, the shortage of homes is the problem now, but that's it'll eventually catch up. You know, you got builders out and they're putting new properties in, so there's opportunity coming.
Yeah, it's funny, in the middle of this COVID, you're seeing this real estate thing just with the low mortgage rates and everything just explode. And
business is good. I focus primarily on commercial, but certainly would get involved with any opportunity that I could.
Married, have children?
I'm married with 2 children. I actually have 2 grandchildren. I spend a lot of time with my family. So
great. And did you go to school here in Chattanooga?
I did. Actually, I'm a product of busing. I grew up in East Chattanooga. We went to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade there at East Chattanooga Elementary, and then I went to Avondale Elementary for a couple of years, Hillcrest, and then on to Dellwood, and then attended middle school and high school up on Highway 58.
Which high school is that on Highway 58?
Central High School.
Central, okay, Central. So you're a Central guy, okay, good. How do you like to spend your free time? What do you do when you're not being a grandfather and a busy?
Well, there's all kinds of things going on with the grandkids for sure, but boating, we've been in the boating life for a while. Golf, workout, exercise, travel.
You look pretty fit.
Well, thank you, sir.
Now you're running for mayor, so the whole city is your case, is not like the town council people. Why do you believe you'd make a good mayor?
Well, I think that my skill set at this point, I thought about running city council for a while, but I'm an administrator. I worked for a Fortune 200 company for 13 years, and a large part of what they trained us was they turned us into pretty darn good administrators.
So you feel that's prepared you for work. Tell me, these questions kind of go together. These are kind of, you may not have these questions, but tell me what you think of Chattanooga. You're a lifelong resident, so the question is kind of, What's the truth about the city? I've heard that the city is really two cities from a lot of people running for office, that there's two Chattanoogas. And then I've heard and I haven't heard that addressed so much. But are we a good place to be, or do we have a lot of problems?
I used to share with my clients, I think the Garden of Eden's around here somewhere. So as a hometown boy, I love our city. I think that, where else would you want to go? And we will find, I actually lived a lot of my life thinking about, hey, at some point I'm going to retire and move to Florida. But now we find all the Florida people moving back to Chattanooga, so maybe we'll just continue to visit down there. But, my father was a World War II veteran. He truly lived the American dream, basically had one job his whole career. He worked for the Tennessee Department of Transportation with a brief interruption. He was drafted for 3 years. And my mother actually worked for the F.W. Woolworth Company for 40 plus years, so her job was equally sufficient. And we grew up downtown and actually grew up in the Woolworth store. Back then, the kids came in and counted in inventory time and things like that. So I spent a lot of time at the Woolworth store. And actually, it turned into a job for me, 14, 15, 16. I worked as the porter there.
Oh, I remember going to Woolworth
sure.
when I was a kid. They had a lunch counter?
Man, they had me a cheesecake waiting every day when I got there. I would actually get out of high school, catch a bus, or middle school at that time, ride to town, eat my cheesecake. A lot of people don't know all that wonderful food that they served was actually created in this huge kitchen upstairs.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, it was fantastic. And it wasn't can opener food either. It was all, prepared fresh there every day. But I cleaned that kitchen up, washed all those pots and pans and carried the garbage out, and then rode home with my mother at night. So
wow,
it was a great
It's a great story.
And my first job, actually, I grew up in East Chattanooga, so I started at the Red Food Store at 13 years old. My cousin, she was dating the assistant produce manager, so I went right into produce. I wore the green bow tie and had a bank account with American National Bank. Charlie White at Western Auto made me a loan for my first new bicycle to ride back and forth to work. So it only kind of, I thought, made sense for me.
It was kind of like a small community.
It was, and it made sense for me to end up in the car business because, I had my first purchase at 13, so.
Isn't that something?
It was a blessing.
Well, along with what you think about the city, tell me what you think the direction the city should be going during the next 4 years.
Well, I think for me, having served an apprenticeship in the local 43 plumbers and steam fitters, one of my primary goals will to be establish a vocational training center. I think the jobs of the future truly are welding, bricklaying, but also, people need to be trained to operate these computers right out of high school. So the program focus will be for juniors and seniors, and really to engage them and give them skills that right out of high school they can go get a job welding.
Let me ask you this. If you were elected, what would be your top 3 to 5 issues? Well,
the Vocational Training Center, and I've already reached out to the local building trades representatives, and they're on board with it. And they even have I wouldn't say it's a pilot program because it's been running, but they've got a program at Sequoia Vocational through Saudi Daisy that's similar, and they're on board with creating a vocational training center in Chattanooga. Secondly, I'll work to secure our neighborhoods, and I think that has to be done through training, more diversity for our police force, but also we have an issue I've learned that retaining our talent. So we would work to create a better retention program for police officers. My understanding is we get them trained and get these top-notch people, and then they offer them, more money to move to other cities. So I don't know exactly how to deal with that, and I do know that they've got a program in place, but retention for police officers will certainly be something that we will focus on. And then I think right now one thing that I don't hear the other candidates talking about, no disrespect, but I'm well aware that in March, instead of shutting the city down and really taking severe cost-cutting measures, that we continue to run the city like everything was okay, whereas 50% of the city's revenue comes from sales tax, and that was whacked by 50%. So I was fortunate to be sitting on the desk at the BMW store in 2008 when the markets collapsed, and we rallied everybody together. We focused on efficiency, and we got through it as a shining star in the company. And I think right now is the time to unite these 3,000 city employees. They have the power, the resources, the skill to get the city through this hump that we've got to go through, and it's really there. I think our current mayor has, made that, apparent to us that we have a shortfall, and it'll only be the city employees uniting together and creating efficiencies so that they're constantly looking for every way we can be better without cutting services, without raising taxes. I'm going to attempt to unite the city as a hands-on mayor out there with them every day, working to improve our operations.
Out of these three, or you might find yourself in there the first day, is there anything you kind of wave the flag about and say, this is my priority, I'm here? I know you got to work with
City
the council
sure.
and everything, but is there anything you would say, this is number one?
Well, truly the Vocational Training Center. I think there are opportunities out there for people, but they just don't have the training to be able to go out right out of high school and do the jobs. So we will focus on that. Without a doubt.
And I think a lot of it too, my opinion, is soft skills are needed too. I mean, the way you present yourself, the way you go to a job interview, the way you dress, whether you shake hands well. I mean, people don't think that makes a difference, but people size you up when they're looking for employees very quickly.
Yes, sir.
Do you look them in the eye? Do you, things like that? I mean,
well, and I think some of that's just basic respect. We have to learn certainly to respect ourselves, to learn to respect others. So focusing on that. In East Chattanooga yesterday, as an example, knocking on doors, was going in the convenience store. A man grabbed me, and long story short, he had just left the courthouse. He had his $5,000 worth of court fees he has, and he says he hadn't gotten in trouble in 20 years, and he showed me the documents he hadn't. And I just basically shared with him, it's like, you're getting a stimulus check, go lay that down on it and start making payments, because I had a time in my life when I went to a little window over in East Chattanooga every Friday and paid them $15 until I paid off a debt that I'd accumulated. So giving people hope that they really can become better is part of what has to be done. Amen. Encourage them.
I'm gathering from what you answered in the first one that you're not in favor of any kind of a tax increase at this time.
Not at this time. I think that I have been fortunate in my preparation for this job and just recently to learn that there's a lot of waste in the city government, and it'll take those leaders and administrators that are already in place to go look for it and find it. I mean, it's kind of the old theory. You get to December. My brother works for TVA, so I've heard this on even a bigger scale. I probably maybe shouldn't have said that. But they got $100 grand left. We got to go spend it, or we don't get another $100 grand next year. So, not sure exactly how you deal with that, but the focus has to be, in trimming those budgets and being more efficient.
Well, and the mayor is the guy who creates the budget.
Yes,
so
sir. I understand.
The city council is not the one. I was educated on that yesterday by another interview. I thought it was a council got involved in the budget, but actually the mayor presents the budget, and they just yes or no.
Well, and I've been involved in budgeting for years. Again, I worked for Sonic Automotive for 13 years. They're a Fortune 200 company, and we were heavily involved in our budgets, and they were multi-million-dollar budgets. So I know this is much more than that, but I think the people are already there and in place to find places where we can save and cut back.
Let me ask you this question. Jobs are just all important for a community. After you've got kind of the law and order, and you've got the rule of law so people can make contracts and they can buy and sell land and things, and then the next thing you've got to have is you've got to have an enforced law. You've got to have jobs for people. You've got to have it's got to grow. And so we've been pretty lucky to come from where we were when we were a smokestack city and that fell apart to where we are now. I mean, we have a pretty diverse economy, and COVID hit us, but assuming COVID is gone or dealt with, what can the city do to continue to grow our economy and grow more jobs in the Chattanooga area?
Well, I think my experience uniquely positions me that with BMW, I've been fortunate to have traveled all over the world. I've been to Spain, I've been to Germany, I've met the Crown Prince of Bavaria in a castle over there. So all that experience in travel has given me, I think I'm groomed and I'm ready to go sell our city all over the world, to recruit industries here. There's no reason that we can't be the Silicon River Valley, as an example. Whether we'll ever get Google out here or not, who knows, or whether we want them, maybe we'd still have to think that through too. But I think that I'll spend my time, there's no doubt the tourism industry has been fantastic for our city. The leaders before have done tremendous jobs getting Volkswagen and Amazon here and other companies that go with them. But we've got to now continue that process to attract industries and high-paying jobs, good jobs.
I think that a lot of people contribute to the Electric Power Board doing the gig thing. Has been brought in all kinds of people who wouldn't have otherwise come here, which has created the logistics industry that's here, with plus together the trucking families here. I mean, it's really amazing.
Well, yeah, the highway systems, the things that are in place here are unbelievable.
Chattanooga, Lincoln called Chattanooga the gateway to the South, and it was because this was the only way you could get to the southern part of the United States was through here. It's the river and the roadway, and
I have certainly researched. I've been researching the previous mayors, and I think that's really some good stuff in that, things that have accomplished. Because, most of us, I would have never known that Chattanooga was the first city to have their intersections ready when this Interstate 75 came through.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And
I did not know that. I think one of the mayors stepped up at one point and said, hey, we're going to spend $100 million, and this was maybe in 1950, which knocked everybody for a loop, but only to go spend the $100 million in the tunnels and the bridges and things we use today.
I remember when Ojati Bridge didn't go anywhere.
Sure.
I remember when it just stopped.
It's been quite a learning process, and I've been studying as much as I possibly can for 6 months.
What do you think? Let me shift gears a little bit.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people are concerned about families and family disintegration, the lack of families forming, children not without proper supervision. What do you think is the proper role of government in the life of needy families? I mean, do you have a philosophy about that that's going to guide you?
Well, I think, in going through, preparing for this meeting today, I was talking to my granddaughter last night, and I just said, hey, what do you know about the preamble to the Constitution? Now, she's in the 5th grade.
Yes.
And she said, the what? I said, the preamble to the Constitution. So we went over it last night, but I think that education has failed us. I don't know who to be held responsible, but they absolutely have failed us. Some of my friends have said, you need to run for the school board. But what I found out in talking to school board members is they don't feel like they have any control anymore, that all they do is pick the superintendent.
Right.
So I think the role of government is what it's always been, at least in America, and that is the preamble to the Constitution. It's very simple for us to establish justice, to, ensure domestic tranquility. All those things, are government's responsibility to the people.
Okay, fair enough. Do you see a role in local government? There's so many services that get delivered to people through churches, synagogues, mosques, temples. Do you see a role in your administration to continue the kind of partnerships that have gone on for over 150 years in Chattanooga? I mean, do you see that continuing?
Absolutely. I think I would have to learn more about that, but in thinking through that question, and thank you for providing us the questions up front so we get a little time to study, but I think that there's already so many people that are involved. I mean, these 3,000 employees that work for the city, I mean, that's half of them we hope go to church somewhere. So we've already got the people in place just from their employment. And then certainly the partnerships have to continue on.
Well, homelessness is a big issue, and if you look historically at Chattanooga, all the homeless ministries, all the homeless beds that were provided in Chattanooga for years and years and years came originally out of churches that they started them, and then that was where you went when you were homeless. You went to one of these shelters or to a church. Let me ask you a question. This is kind of came up earlier this year, or last year, when we were having demonstrations on a regular basis, and it was a question about equity, and especially about the police. And let me start with, what do you think of the efforts to make the city police more accountable to an outside community board of unelected people, reallocate funds from the Chattanooga Police Department to non-police budget? Now that didn't get on the ballot, but they had 6,000 signatures of people who wanted it on the ballot.
Sure.
but they didn't have enough to get it. What do you think of that whole notion?
Well, I
Defunding
truly
the police.
said that I was going to use part of this campaign to say that I think that you nailed it. An unelected group is unaccountable. So the last thing we need is another layer of government that's left to be unaccountable. Number two, they're not trained. They have no police training. So I don't think that it'd be like hiring me to fix your car instead of sell you a car. I don't have any training in automobile repair. So it would just not work out well.
Okay.
And also, the county has an oversight for theirs, but it's civil oversight. So,
Right.
certainly that's probably required. But I don't think they need another layer of government. We've got to hold the people that are in place accountable instead of, the elected officials need to hold the people in place accountable.
Now, see, that would be my answer to the question,
Yeah.
is you've elected the people, they run the police department,
Sure.
you don't have a problem, you have a problem with it, then don't vote for the guy next time.
That's right.
And do something different. So that'd be my thought. Do you believe the current city administration and the county and the state administrations have handled the response to COVID-19 well? It's been a major disruption, or could it have been improved upon?
I really think they dropped the ball, and only from the standpoint that, I'm a salesperson and in sales my whole life. So at one point, one of my bosses said, sometimes we do club our customers over the head, but you've got to do it with a velvet hammer and a very light touch so that they never knew it. So instead of coming out and mandating it and running over us with a freight train, maybe they could have done a little more sales job. And I think people pretty quickly realized that all those things were necessary. I've washed my hands and quit shaking hands. I haven't had a cold this year. So there's no doubt there's a lot of good come out of it, just the implementation of it. And I know the mayor is a great man, a wonderful, caring person, but maybe he was a little overwhelmed. But I truly think it should have been a softer sell and encouraging us and provide us with facts about what's going on. We all now know whether we're going to accept it or not. The mandate is a waste of time to wear a mask again because it's all happening at home. Hundreds of schools and countries all over the world open. It's not happening at the schools. So I think it's time to get the schools open, get our kids back in class.
Well,
And all those things will start taking care of themselves.
yeah, I think more information and letting people have more choice would have been a much better, including business owners and consumers, and I think would have been a lot better approach. How will you approach the problem of one of the problems that the city has had now for, at least 10 or 15 years, is the drive-by shootings, especially on weekends. It seems like there's always young men, not always, but there's random shooting into houses, people getting shot. About 2 months ago now, 3 children were shot, and they said it was a targeted shooting. By the police said that. A 9-year-old, a 12-year-old, and I think it was a 6-year-old. And that's really not a policing problem. I mean, they can't race there and get in front of every bullet on a random shooting. I mean, but it's something that affects the whole city. Our crime rate is really high for a city, according to the FBI. What would you do about that? They've had task force, but they don't seem to have gotten much traction. And what would you think?
Well, I think that it is policing. Some feedback that I've been fortunate to get from some officers is that we're restrained. We really need to be allowed to go out and do our jobs. We certainly have to have an understanding of the life that people are living and the things that they're having to deal with. But in reality, the police do have to come down with a firm hand in most cases like that. And they have to do the detective work and track these people down and hold them accountable when things like that happen. So certainly policing. Secondly, job creation and opportunity for people to grow. And even just like sharing, you can pay your debt off, but you might have to pay it at $15 a week to get through it. So some of that stuff maybe just hasn't been properly shared or taught, in their households and homes of some of the, people committing these crimes.
Right. There's definitely some kind of values deficit there going on.
Yeah.
Affordable housing. You're in the real estate business.
Yeah.
There seems to be a shortage of inventory.
Sure.
and what's there seems to be out of the price range of some people. What and the city has tried to different approaches for affordable housing, and it's for some candidates it's a big issue. What is
Well,
your
I think affordable housing is a popular political talking point.
Okay.
As you said, the numbers of voters, it's a very low turnout.
Yes.
So by promising people free housing, we're actually cheating them out of the American dream. As long as you keep people in free housing, they'll never own their own homes. And, you know, probably more from a national level, but it's almost like an arrogant disrespect for the people by not providing them with educations, not providing them with training so that they can go get jobs and they can afford housing. But what I've learned in interviewing realtors through this process is that the city itself has some red tape and some regulations that are standing in the way. As an example, there's been multiple properties cited to me that were quadruplexes. You know, the owners were out of town, they let them go vacant, the electricity gets turned off, they sit there a while, they come back to try to put them back together, and I'll have to study closely exactly where that regulation is, but now it can no longer be a quadruplex. So they turn them into homes and sell them, so multiple examples of duplexes, quadruplexes, and triplexes, just like that, that because of city regulations, once a certain status, say you have a fire or something like that, it's no longer a duplex. So definitely focusing on removing those regulations and creating opportunities. I mean, developers have got burnt. Multiple developers that bought up duplexes and things like that, only to find that, I mean, really, who's going to turn a duplex into a single family home and make it really look like something? So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there just from that one thing.
A difficult question. You answer it the way you want to, but our state legislature is, we have a supermajority of Republicans, and it's very likely that they will pass some kind of late-term abortion-related law. Now, in other states, cities and counties, when they've done this, have said no, kind of like immigration. They said, we're a sanctuary city. We're not going to enforce the state law. We're going to let things continue. So you're the mayor. They say a late-term abortion law comes where they say you can't have abortions past 6 months or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Would you abide with the state's rules, or would you in any way would you say no, we're not going to do that here in Chattanooga?
Well, I'm certainly pro-life. I think the mayor has little impact in reality.
They would, except in this scenario I just described.
In that scenario, how can you say you're law and order if you don't enforce the laws? So
well, you can't.
You can't.
You can't. Well, listen, you've been a great interview, Robert, and we appreciate you. And you are running for mayor. The election is March 2nd, and if you've been watching the screen, Robert's contact information is up there. His email address and his website are up there. You can also find this on HamiltonFlourishing.org's website. I think it'll be up there pretty soon. And then don't forget to vote March 2nd, and early voting starts February the 10th, ends on February the 25th. And Robert, any last words?
Well, probably all I would want to add is that I've been taught through the years that a rising tide lifts all boats. So we certainly have to work on creating a broad spectrum of opportunity for everyone.
Yes.
For small businesses, no matter what walk of life you're on. But I think also I would share that, you know, I started my family young, so there were times that I actually faced maybe having my electricity turned off and have had my electricity off. And I'm afraid that some of the other candidates in the race, they've never faced anything like that. And not only that, their friends never have even faced anything like that. So there's a disconnect, you know, with the voters, and they're, you know, what can they do? They just don't know. But I have walked through most every walk of life, and I think I've got, you know, multiple levels of skills that I can bring to the table to, I think together we can make Chattanooga better than it's ever been.
Robert, thank you. Good luck
sir,
to you.
for this opportunity.
And thank you for coming and being with us. And thank you for watching this edition of Hamilton